Hi, it's Mia from the Potter's Wheel. I'm at home in my studio, and I thought it would be fun to show everyone who's possibly working at home with less tools than usual a sweet project for making simple plates, and if you make them small enough, you don't even need a rolling pin. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is run through some simple tools you'll need. I'm going to use an 8-inch pattern. I've made a group of patterns. If you get really ambitious, you can find different shapes and different sizes rather to use, and you can make a set of plates. A rolling pin, two guides of the same thickness, a metal rib or a firm plastic rib, a fettling knife or a pin tool, a wire tool. If you have fabric or if you have foam around the house or an old pillow that you don't care to keep anymore, you'll need something like that. And then textures. You can stamp for texture or you can roll on. I have a piece of embossed faux leather, a piece of heavy canvas texture, and then a leaf. Because it's hard to find any nice leaves outside right now, I took something from a flower arrangement in the house. You'll also need two boards that are somewhat absorbent. I have a piece of marine plywood here and a piece of sheetrock that I cut to size I need, bound with duct tape. Any boards you can find at home will work. Now, this is an 8-inch plate. It takes about 2 1/4 pounds of clay. You don't have a scale at home, so this is about a 3 by 3 by 3 cube, or it's 1/12 of a block of 25 pounds of clay if you're starting with a fresh block. And what I'm going to do is start compressing the edges by pounding with my hand or paddling with my hand. And I'm paddling this way and this way. Do your best not to fold the clay over on itself, capturing air. That just adds more work later on in the process. So I've compressed it a bit this way, gotten it into a shape that I can work with. And now, putting it down on the canvas, a piece of canvas for working on also. And I begin by pushing. And the whole idea here is that if you push down repeatedly, you're compressing the clay so that when you let it dry finally, it won't be so inclined to warp. And you should, with just a little care, be able to end up with a nice flat plate. So I'm pushing from the center, and then I gradually and in a circular manner press outward. And once I've done that, then I'll flip it over, do the same thing in this direction. Eventually, when I feel like it's pretty close to flat, as narrow as I want it or as thick as I need it, I can even stretch it a little bit if I have to, just to get a size that's close to this. This is pretty close already. So just a little bit of tossing to stretch it. Place the pattern on here. Just about right. I'm going to stretch it just a little more. Okay, now, what's really clever about this process is that I have a slab, do not have a slab roller, and I really want this to be a consistent thickness. So now that I've pressed it down, tossed it a little bit, now I can take my wire tool This will be a little telling. Any bigger than this and it gets a little challenging to do it this way. But for the smaller plates, you take the wire tool, stretch it taut, and pull through. And by pulling through, you're getting a slab that's an even thickness. I'm kind of holding the sticks with my body so that they don't slide forward. That's so cool. And there we are. So now this is a nice 1/4 inch slab of clay. I'll put this in a plastic bag. Save it for the next. One of the tools that I forgot to mention was a spray bottle. We need the spray bottle to smooth the slab that we've just created. So I'll take the metal rib, and with firmness in my hand against the rib, but not so much a firmness pressing down on the clay, I rib the surface. It compresses and it makes a really even surface that I will be pleased with when it's glazed. This clay is pretty soft. That side's done. Now an interesting thing here is if your canvas is long enough, you just fold it over the slab, flip it. You didn't have to handle it or put finger marks in it, and there you go. I'm cleaning off the excess clay, gently spritz this side, and then do the same process again. You can see any low marks will possibly show up when you glaze, so you really want to work on getting rid of them. And I can see I have some little bubbles here. This was reworked clay, so it's an opportunity to either try to compress it so that they break, which is sometimes possible, or just pin tool it. Yeah, that one just broke. Pin tool it and go back over it again. So, and again, I can come back and address this when it's a little firmer too. So for the demonstration's sake, I'm going to keep on moving here. All right, so smoothed. Now, so I'm going to go back and flip this over again. Give it one more wipe down with the rib, because I don't really want the canvas texture here. Yeah, it's still really soft. Okay. I'm going to go with the rib marks on there for now. So we have the slab smoothed. Now I'm going to flip it over onto one board. It's a little large. Will be okay for our end size. Flip it over. Then I place it on the foam bed. Actually, like that, over, and then press down, rotate it, press again, flip back over. That's intended to release some of the tension in the clay. I'm going to cut my 8-inch circle, fettling knife or pin tool. If you're using the fettling knife, nice straight tool so you get a good straight edge out there. Extra. Okay, now I've got my 8-inch shape. Flip it over on the board I intend it to stay on. Release it. Now this is the good side, and now I'm using this placemat as a texture because it's nice and coarse, meaning a larger open pattern. And just press down with my hand. Again, if you have a rolling pin, you could use a rolling pin, but I'm going to go on the idea that this is a project for someone without all the tools that we have in a studio space. So, and I like this little wrap around edge here, so I want to make sure that that shows. And I can see now the clay is a little drier and it's taking a little less marking from my hands, which is a good sign. All right, now I'm going to take the canvas and I'm going to put that down in a way so that I can feel where the edge of the other texture is, and then just use this to texture the remaining area of the slab. And I'm really not trying to flatten or thin this slab anymore. It's about 1/4 of an inch thick, which by the time it is done being worked with and dries is a nice thickness for a sturdy plate. Okay. Now I'm hoping that that ready? Okay. Now, so this is the texture. I have a finer area and a coarser area. I am going to remove some of it where I anticipate laying a leaf. I'm really rubbing it in this time. And while I'm doing this, I'm also thinking about comparisons of depth of texture, size of repeats, just kind of wondering how they'll communicate to the viewer. I'm going to gently push this in along the way here. So you don't have to be completely authentic with your plants that you use. You can break them apart, reinterpret. Okay, I think that'll be okay, deep enough. There. All right. So there is what I have so far. I think I'm going to leave these because the clay is pretty soft still. All right, so I'm leaving the leaves on so I get a better impression from a little drier surface. If you, by any chance, from previous work, have underglaze in the house, this is a wonderful stage to brush some underglaze around the leaf, which will act as a resist, and you can pull the leaf out when the underglaze is just dry enough to not be glossy anymore. It leaves a little bit of depth for the glaze to settle into and a contrasting color, which can be really beautiful. The next step will be to curve the edges up all the way around the piece. Now, when I do this, I use my fingers as a measure or a guide. So, for instance, my thumb width is how high I'm going to work this edge up. And then I get accustomed to what I'm feeling on the back side too with my other fingers. So I always want them to land together in roughly the same relationship so that I can be pretty sure about getting a nice consistent size to my edge. So I'm lifting a little with the left hand because I'm right-handed, lifting with the left hand to lead it up, but then really pushing with my thumb of the right hand. And I'm kind of pushing with the knuckle of my thumb to the floor so that I'm compressing at the floor side of that curve. To encourage it to stay there when it begins to dry. Now, we have a texture right up to the edge here, so I'm going to avoid any real smoothing of the inside curve because I want to keep the texture as much as I can. On the outside, I'll feel free to run my finger around there and smooth it off and compress from the outside edge. The next step will be to compress the edges of the piece. It's a more finished look rather than just a cut out shape. A little modeling, a little handling on your part goes a long way to make a really nice piece when you're done. Even on the outside, I may use this configuration as a standard or a measure so that I know I'm still keeping a similar curve, a similar height. Use your body parts that you're using as a measure also, as a guide. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to go again around and I'm compressing the top edge. So I'm kind of gently squeezing, forcing top edge, back corner, and now even the front corner a little bit. But trying not to get, or the inside, right, the inside corner or edge. Trying not to remove too much of the texture information on the inside. So that's pretty much it. When I'm finished with the initial setup, the initial shape, the initial curve or an edge, I'll let this sit overnight with a piece of plastic over it, and then I'll go back the next day and do the same work that I just did. But it'll be a little firmer so I can press a little harder without distorting. I can also take a small makeup sponge and use that damp to compress a little more, smooth a little more, work out any details that you see that you would like to change, and then again cover it and let it sit covered for 2 days. Then I uncover it and let it dry the rest of the way, and there you have a plate. So that's it for this project. I hope you enjoyed visiting me in my studio, and I hope you'll come back soon. Bye!